Welcome to the deep dive. The starting point for this exploration was maybe a bit unusual. It began with thinking about that strange place where deep sadness and real beauty seem to overlap.
Mm,
And that thought process somehow led us down this path, uncovering what feels like a forgotten philosophy, something we're calling harmonious doing.
right. And it feels forgotten because it pushes back so strongly against, well, the default setting of the modern world, doesn't it?
It really does. Today's culture just relentlessly pushes radical individualism.
Hmm.
The idea that the goal is to be this self-made, totally self-actualized peak, basically conquering everything around you.
And our sources are suggesting that this model, this focus on the isolated individual, well, it's actually the root of a lot of our current problems. It leads to alienation, ecological damage.
Yeah, a kind of fundamental disharmony. So our mission in this deep dive is really to explore the alternative. There's this wisdom embedded in ancient Gaelic philosophy, and it's got these fascinating echoes in Eastern thought, like Taoist Wu Wei or Buddhist ideas of interbeing.
Exactly. And maybe the most powerful, almost darkly ironic starting point is a place called Harmony Garden in Melrose, Scotland.
Harmony Garden. Sounds lovely.
It sounds peaceful, right? But it was built back in 1807 by a man named Robert Waugh. And his wealth, it came entirely from his plantations and the enslaved people he owned in Jamaica.
Wow. So he actually named his Scottish home after his Caribbean plantation house.
He did, and he lived there quite secluded, behind these high walls, seeking this kind of aesthetic harmony, a purchased peace.
That perfectly captures the difference, doesn't it? Actual harmony, this harmonious doing we're talking about, it's relational. It's about community, reciprocity.
Whereas this aesthetic harmony is isolated, it's bought,
Yeah.
and fundamentally it's often built on someone else's disharmony, someone else's suffering. That's a crucial distinction to keep in mind.
Okay, so let's dive into this Gaelic alternative. How was this philosophy of relational harmony actually lived out? How was it woven into the land and the culture?
Well, one of the most striking things is how it refuses to put the individual front and center. It's embedded right there in the language itself.
How so?
Think about possession. In English, we say, I have something. I own this. It asserts my status as the owner.
Right, very definite.
But in Gaelic, the common phrase is the agam. Literally, it is at me.
At me, not mine.
Exactly. It positions the self differently. You're not the ultimate owner. The object is just temporarily situated with you. You're within this larger network.
That's a profound shift in perspective just from one phrase. It makes you more of a custodian than an owner.
Precisely. And if you apply that kind of thinking across the board, well, look at the old legal systems, the Brehon Laws in Scotland and Ireland.
They weren't about punishment in the way we think of it now, were they?
Not primarily. They weren't really about the state asserting power or just enacting vengeance on an individual. The main goal was restoration.
Restoring what?
I mean-
Balance.
Yes, restoring balance, healing the social fabric after a wrong had been done. It often involved negotiation, restitution, making the whole community whole again, not just isolating or punishing the offender.
So justice itself was seen as repairing relationships, not just dealing with an isolated act.
Absolutely. But maybe the most powerful physical symbol of this harmonious doing on the land is the feannagan, the lazybeds.
Oh, the lazybeds. I've read about those. They sound like anything but lazy.
Not lazy at all. It's this incredible agricultural technique, but it's also a whole philosophy. You're not trying to conquer the tough, thin soil of the highlands. You're collaborating with it.
How do they work?
Well, you dig trenches and pile the earth into these raised mounds. That improves drainage, creates a warmer microclimate, and they'd often mix in seaweeds, stones, whatever was available locally to build fertility.
Okay, so working with the materials at hand.
Yes, but the crucial part, it almost always required communal effort. It was done through miafel.
Mial. The community work, right?
Exactly. So cultivating the land and cultivating the community were basically the same act. Your survival depended on cooperation, on relationality. It was baked into the economy.
It makes the land feel like, well, like a partner or even a relative you work with, rather than just a resource to exploit.
That's exactly the shift in perspective. But this way of life, this deep tradition, it wasn't just allowed to fade away.
No, it was actively suppressed. The sources mention things like the Statutes of Iona and, much later, the Highland Clearances.
Yeah, these were traumatic events, more than just land grabs. They were the violent imposition of a completely different worldview, an extractive, individualistic, commodity-based view of the land and law.
Forcing that isolated peak philosophy onto a culture built around being part of a living range. So if we're talking about reclaiming some of that wisdom today.
Then things like land reform can't just be about swapping ownership papers. It has to be about shifting towards real stewardship, maybe restorative justice, thinking about regenerative agriculture, community wealth building.
It's about learning to see the land as a relative again, not just a resource.
That's the core challenge, I think.
Okay, so the Gaelic world expressed this through things like maithol, the language itself. How does this idea of, let's say, appropriate action show up in Eastern philosophy? Where are the parallels?
Well, thousands of miles away, you find this core idea beautifully expressed in the Taoist concept of wu-wei.
Way. Now, that often gets translated as non-action or non-interference, right? Which can sound passive.
It really can, and that's a huge misunderstanding. It's not about sitting back and doing nothing. Alan Watts described it brilliantly. He said it's about finding the grain of the situation and going with it.
Finding the grain, like working with wood.
Exactly like that. Or think of a skilled sailor using the wind, or a judo expert using their opponent's momentum. It's not passive. It's incredibly aware, skillful, efficient action that comes from understanding the dynamics at play. Minimal effort for maximum effect because you're in harmony with the situation.
That makes sense. And Watts had that great analogy about gardening, didn't he? Contrasting the Western approach.
Yes. The sort of cartoon sergeant major shouting attention at the tulips, trying to force them into a rigid, unnatural pattern, seeing oneself as completely separate from and in charge of nature.
Whereas the Zen gardener,
The Zen gardener sees themselves differently. They see their own intelligence as just part of the same process that grows ferns and moves stars. They're like a mobile plant with intelligence.
wow, I like that. A mobile plant with intelligence.
So their caution isn't, how do I impose my will here? It's more like, okay, what does this particular piece of land working with me want to become?
It's that same relational intelligence, again, refusing to be external to the system, which must mean accepting, even welcoming, the unexpected, the spontaneous.
Absolutely. There's that wonderful story about the tea master Sen no Riki. His own master told him to sweep the garden path.
Okay.
So Riki sweeps it perfectly, meticulously, not a speck of dust, not a leaf out of place. He thinks he's nailed it.
Sounds pretty clean to me.
But the master comes out, takes one look, and sees the flaw. It's too perfect. It's artificial. All the natural spontaneity is gone. So the master just walks over to a tree, gives a branch a little shake, and a few leaves flutter down onto the path. There, he says. Now that is a clean path.
That's brilliant. True harmony has to include that element of nature just doing its thing.
Yeah.
You cultivate, you guide, but you don't completely control.
Precisely. And this leads to this fascinating idea the Japanese painter Saburo Hasegawa called the controlled accident.
The controlled accident. Okay, what does that look like in practice?
It's that blend of human intention and natural spontaneity. Think about Riki again, arranging flowers ikebana for a powerful prince, Hideyoshi.
Right.
Instead of some formal, stiff arrangement, Riki apparently just took some plum blossoms, knocked them off the branch, and let them float randomly on the water in a bowl.
Just let them fall where they may.
Yes, and that random, natural pattern was hailed as this perfect expression of beauty. The art was in allowing the accident, controlling the context, but not the outcome entirely.
That reminds me of another story from the sources, the smashed tea caddy.
Oh yes, that's an amazing one. A nobleman got angry because Riki didn't praise his expensive tea caddy enough, so he smashed it in a fit of pique.
Right, just destroyed it.
But later, the pieces were gathered and meticulously repaired, mended with molten gold along the cracks. Kintsugi, it's called.
And the result?
Riki saw it and declared the mended caddy absolutely superb. The network of gold lines, the evidence of its history, its trauma, it made it more beautiful and more valuable.
It's like the Brehon Laws, again, restoration, creating something potentially richer than the original perfect state. Not hiding the damage, but integrating it.
Exactly. And this philosophy, this harmony, it flows right into design and architecture too, especially with the idea of emptiness.
How so? Japanese buildings often seem to blend in, don't they? Not like they're shouting, "Look at me."
They really do. They often merge with the landscape rather than, as Watts put it, sticking out like a sore thumb. And they use natural elements quite directly. You might see a temple pillar that's literally just a tree trunk, maybe with the bark stripped off, but still retaining its natural form.
Not hiding its treeness.
Not at all. But the key element, especially in Zen-influenced design, is space. Emptiness.
You mean like minimalism? Less stuff?
It's related, but deeper. In traditional Far Eastern art, the empty space on the scroll isn't just background, it's an active part of the composition. The philosophy is that emptiness itself is creative. It holds potential.
That feels very counter to our modern tendency to fill every moment, every space.
Yeah.
The sources suggest our cluttered homes might reflect that kind of inner clutter.
Yeah, a lack of inner peace leading us to fill the void externally. Zen interiors often counteract this directly. Think about traditional Japanese rooms, minimal furniture, maybe futons that get rolled up and put away during the day.
So the bedroom space isn't just a bedroom, it's free for other uses, for emptiness.
Exactly. And that use of space also relates to how people manage living close together.
Ah, right. The paradox of privacy in dense populations. We often just cram people together like sardines in a can, constant forced togetherness.
But in Japan, you see the use of screens, partitions, creating these little pockets of privacy and peace, even within a small home or a busy environment. It allows for necessary solitude.
It makes me think of that backwards law you sometimes find in Taoism or Zen.
Which one?
Like, if you want to be strong, be weak. If you want to be powerful, withdraw. That finding strength in yielding or finding connection through solitude.
Oh, absolutely. The idea that learning to appreciate and utilize solitude actually makes you better at interacting with others. When you're okay in your own space, internally and externally, you can be present with others without needing something from them constantly.
It feels less demanding, maybe.
I think so. And this brings us right back around to where we started with those Celtic symbols.
The knots, the Triskelion.
Yes, the Celtic knots, the Triquetra or Trinity knot, the Triskelion. What's characteristic about them?
They're interwoven continuous lines, usually three elements locked together, no real start or end point.
Exactly. That intricate flowing geometry is almost a perfect visual metaphor for inner being. It embodies that core Gaelic worldview that everything is connected, everything is part of a continuum.
The absolute opposite of the isolated peak.
Completely.
So wrapping this up, this journey we've taken from the communal effort of the lazybeds, the feannagan, to the spontaneous wisdom of a Zen garden, the creative potential of emptiness in design. It all points to this powerful counter-narrative, doesn't it? This idea of harmonious doing rooted in community and connection to the land.
It really does. And the sources seem to suggest that the big challenge for us now is to consciously choose that path.
Yeah.
To move away from what they poetically call a song of alienation.
And towards a song of belonging. And the hopeful part is that cultural memory isn't entirely lost. It's still there in the history, in the landscape, even in fragments of language.
That Gaelic philosophy is essentially calling us to stop striving to be these lonely, separate peaks.
And to remember, we're actually fundamentally part of a vast, living, beautiful range.
The wisdom is there. It's about reclaiming it.
So the question for you, listening, is perhaps this. What's one conscious choice you could make today, in your own life, your own work, your own community, to start applying that wisdom of Mythal, that communal effort for shared benefit, moving away from just isolated ownership and towards a more relational way of being?